Rust on the Razor, Tom and Scott series, Book 6. Author, Mark Richard Zubero. Publisher, St. Martin's Press, New York. Narrator, Eric Aust. Chapter 9. Scott jerked around on a stool and grabbed the nearest man's pool cue. Scott leaped right and I jumped left so we would be able to come at them from both sides. Scott bashed the pool cube against the bar, half broke off, twirled through the air, crashed through the window, and broke the neon magnolia sign. The other portion Scott brandished under the nose of the nearest menacing figure. One of them grabbed a beer bottle by the top and smashed off the bottom against a table. The one with the world's ugliest goatee held onto his pool cube as if it were a baseball bat. Unfortunately for my sense of prejudice, none of them wore bib overalls. Nor did any of them grin and reveal a snaggletooth. A voice behind us said, "That's gonna cost you, son." Out of the corner of my eye, I saw the African-American woman holding a sawed-off shotgun aimed at Scott's back. She swung it slowly toward the three attackers. The woman said, "Go." Seconds later, they were gone. "Thank you," I said. "You owe me $200 for the window, the neon, and the pool cue," she said. "This is my place. You busted up. You gotta pay up." "You're Magnolia?" "Yep. I'll take plastic for payment." I gave her my Visa card. As she wrote up the bill, I asked, "Why were they so hostile?" "Sheriff Woodall's death is big news all over this part of the state," she said. "Mr. Carpenter's been famous since forever." She pointed at me. "Since the sheriff died, your face has been all over everywhere. Wouldn't be a baby in 100 miles didn't know if you walked into her room. The sheriff was a big customer out here. People liked him. News about y'all as a couple is all over these parts. Folks are not happy about gay people in general, and you two are remarkably specific. Focuses their anger." "How come you helped us?" "This is my place. It is not easy for an African-American woman to keep it running. I sympathize with you some, and not everyone in the South is a redneck bigot. We're trying to find out who really killed the sheriff. It's the only way I'm going to get out of here. We haven't had a lot of luck asking questions or getting help." "I'll do what I can for you." Lightning flashed through the broken windows. "Our last lead told us the sheriff came out here the night he was killed." "Yeah, he was here." She gave me my credit card back, leaned over the bar, and rested her elbows on the top. "Stayed for close on to an hour." "Why haven't you told anyone this?" "You're the first ones to come and ask. He was found in Bernard early in the morning. As far as I know, his being here had no connection." "Who did he talk to? Did he do anything suspicious? Do you know where he went after? Did he leave with anyone?" Her laughter rang out low and comfortable. "No wonder everybody gets hostile at you. Too many questions coming too fast." "I'm sorry," I said. "That's all right. There's lots of pressure on you. Let me see now. He talked about everybody, and he did nothing suspicious. He didn't tell me where he was going. He left with..." She thought a minute. "I'm not sure I saw him leave." While we asked the next few questions, she plucked a hammer from under the bar, took some tacks and aluminum foil out of a drawer. When she was done tacking over the broken window, the rain ceased coming in. It also caught off any illumination from the lighting. We were told the sheriff often decided not to arrest women and take it out in trade instead. Maybe an angry husband or boyfriend or a furious woman decided to get even or put a stop to it. She tapped her fingertips on the bar. "Rumors about that keep going around." "Are they true?" "A few of the women around here get together once in a while. We aren't radicals or anything. We're black and white. Women who meet to talk. It's very quiet and very secret. We haven't been able to do anything about the sheriff. We hear the same vague rumors. The only way to stop him is for somebody to be willing to stand up and accuse the bastard. No one will? No one would. It isn't possible. The sheriff was very powerful. A woman would be admitting to being unfaithful to her husband. Still, too many people around here who believe the woman is asking for it when she cries rape. Plus, word is he only does it to women who have committed a crime. He has that to hold over their heads as well. We've talked to several lawyers. Their hands were tied unless someone was willing to step forward. I'd like to be able to talk to some of those women, I said. I'm sorry. Even if I knew any names directly, I couldn't give them to you. We keep everybody's story confidential. We are sworn to secrecy, and that helps make our group strong. Everybody knows that no one will tell. Opening up to you might help you, but it wouldn't help the woman involved. I'm sorry. I digested this refusal. How about husbands or boyfriends? Scott asked. Any of the men find out and try to get back at the sheriff? I don't know of any. Preacher Hollis is the one who told us the sheriff was out here that night. We have information that Hollis was molesting little girls. We've got a lawyer in Chicago working on an investigation. Hollis? As far as I know, he's simply a small-town fire and brimstone preacher. I can't picture him working up the nerve to touch his own prick. He's nothing if not useless. None of the women have mentioned him ever, and are you sure your information is right? I don't know. Hollis was scared enough of us telling to admit he and the sheriff were here. He could have legitimately been afraid of that kind of scandal, guilty or not. His career would be ruined. Was he here the other night? Yes. And it wasn't the first time the preacher has come around. He's not supposed to be here. According to him, any place that serves liquor is an establishment straight from hell. He stays half an hour once in a while. He was here talking to the sheriff that night. If he wasn't afraid of blackmail, why would he come to meet the sheriff? I don't know. If they planned on meeting when Hollis shows up, he talks to a few people. It wasn't odd that he talked to the sheriff. They didn't seem to spend a lot of time together. If he's been molesting kids, I'd like to ruin his career. I do know that it won't take a lawyer from up north to get his ass if he's been molesting kids. If he's guilty, we'll bring him down. If I have to do the dragging myself. Who told you this? I admitted it was Jasper Williams. That man is crazy. No reason on earth for a man to be that mean. He's the most evil person I have ever met. The only time I had to ask for help in the bar was to keep him away from here. Afterwards, he threatened to burn me out. Several times late at night, he followed me home in that old ragged Jeep he owns. Things don't have any windows. How'd you get him to stop harassing you? She smiled. The only way to deal with an insane man is to scare him more than he scares you. Ever hear of Hanging Billy Joe Jones? Scott said, didn't he play nose tackle for a couple of years in the pros? Made lots of neck tackles when he could. A lot of late hits played for a bunch of teams. Too dirty even for the NFL. He lives in these parts. We're sort of friends. He paid a visit to Jasper's cabin? Nobody is crazy enough to go out there. I admitted my foray earlier that day. And you live to tell the tale. You always hear about people getting lost in the swamp and not coming out. Nobody knows anybody. It happens too, but everybody has a cousin who has a friend who knows somebody who never came back. Briefly, I told the story. You were lucky, she said. Even Hanging Billy Joe Jones don't chance the swamp. He invited Jasper over for a little visit to his house down in the woods. I don't know how he got him there or what he did when he got him there. I never asked. All I know is Jasper never came back here. For a minute, I listened to the thunder rumble around us. Jasper also told us that Al Holcomb had an African-American mistress? Mr. KKK dipping his wick in the forbidden fruit? Do you know who the woman was? She hesitated an instant before she said, no. Her hesitation aroused my suspicions. Magnolia, making it with the KKK? Didn't fit right, and I didn't think pressing her would do much good, even if I did think she had it. If she wasn't going to tell, I had no way of making her. She glanced around the bar. It's not closing time, but I think I'm going to call it a night. Nobody's coming out here anymore in this storm. Scott and I proceeded to the door. Rain pelted down. One look at our car, and I knew we weren't leaving in it. All 4 tires had been flattened. I looked back at Magnolia, flipping switches and turning out the lights. She walked over, saw the problem, and said, it's hope they left my van alone. We dashed through the downpour. She flung herself into the driver's side. I sprang into the passenger seat, and Scott leapt into the back. He closed the sliding door with a thud. You sure this thing runs? I asked. Been through a couple of hurricanes down on the coast. We'll be fine. The motor gasped to life. The windshield wiper on my side barely cleared the water off the glass. She had to rock the van back and forth to ease it out of the rain-swollen ruts it was in. Magnolia may have gone as fast as 5 miles an hour on her way out. When we got to the creek, it looked a lot wider than it had when we crossed it the first time. Are we going to make it? I asked. She peered into the darkness, left and right. Lots of death and floods caused when people assume the road is still there. The water may not look high, but the road is totally gone. We made it through on the way in, Scott said. You were very foolish and very lucky, Magnolia said. She hitched the gear shift lever into reverse. I know more than one way out of this forest. For an hour, we rattled through deep woods and pouring rain. Finally, we pulled onto the highway. She drove us to Bernard, 100 yards from the first lights of town. She slowed down and pulled to the side of the road. You boys will have to get out here. In the rain? I asked. Why? Scott asked. I have a reputation to keep. Saving your butts in my own place is one thing. Being seen driving you around is another. Folks still aren't too fond of black and white people hanging around together, as your buddy Al could tell you. I could only help you so far. I'll lend you an umbrella. Scott and I trod down the side of the road, sharing the umbrella. The rain sluiced off the black covering. The wind was down at the moment, and the thunder and lightning seemed far off. This should be romantic, I said, hunched together in a pouring rain. We could do a little dance and sing and smile. All the world's a song cue. We can use the phone up ahead. I nodded toward the lights of the 24-hour gas station in front of us. The phone was outside, but under an overhang. While Scott phoned, I decided to go inside and pick up something to eat. 6 pairs of eyes watched me approach the counter. A possible 7th pair belonged to an older man who, even from the back, looked like a reject from a Gabby Hayes look-alike contest. This guy was more shabbily dressed than any homeless person. He didn't turn around to look at me, but kept growling at the clerk about his arthritis and the rain falling, the creek rising, and the gully washing. When I stepped to the counter, pseudo-Gabby turned to look at me. He didn't wear a patch over one eye. This was good. Unfortunately, he had one glass eye. This was disconcerting. Then I realized I was being mean. The poor man had probably been maimed horribly in some accident and gone through life this way. I pictured Dennis being in the same position. The old guy raised a beer can he was holding in his right hand. The top of the can had been removed, leaving jagged edges around the top. He blinked, the one good eye at me, then spat a wad of tobacco juice into the can. He didn't miss a drop. Then he asked, "Yeah, the fact we got a lunch?" "Exit all sympathy, stage left," I said. "I probably am." He spat another wad of tobacco juice and grinned cheerfully, showing deeply stained dentures. He punched me playfully on the shoulder and said, "Can't wait. Haven't had a lynching since I was a lad. If the law gets to you first, it'll spoil all the fun." "Not mine," I said. I put a sandwich and a bag of chips on the counter. The clerk made no move to ring them up. I got the spit grin punch again from the old guy. I hoped he didn't screw up the sequence, or I could be drenched in brown goo. "A lot of people powerful pissed at you. Heard Wainwright Richardson wants to lock you up. The rest of the county would just prefer to see you dead." "How nice for them. I suppose I could try to get out of Dodge before sunup." Spit, grin, punch. "Almost like you, maybe a little bit. Hope I get to be one of the boys at the hanging," I said to the clerk. "I'd like these items." He still made no move to ring them up. I looked around for Scott, who was still talking on the phone and not looking in this direction. The men in the group didn't surround me. They looked like everyday folks, ribbon clerks, assistant managers of the Piggly Wiggly, and maybe a guy who stocked shelves at the Winn-Dixie. Their frowns and sneers declared them to be very unfriendly everyday folks, but they didn't seem the kind that would lynch me on the spot. Gabby said, "You should not have come down here, and you surely should not have killed the sheriff." I could have said, "Don't call me Shirley." I might have said, "Is this some cheap Western?" But while I was only on the nearer side of nervous, I could be convinced to be scared. I did say, "This can promise. I'll leave and you guys can stand here and be prejudiced without me." I turned around and walked out. I expected a squirt of tobacco juice in the back. I opened the door and ambled over to Scott. I thought he was arguing with someone. He slammed the phone down. "Mary isn't around. I can't get anybody else in the family to come get us." He seemed near tears. I talked to Nathan, and I thought he understood about us, but I think Hiram and Shannon got to him. Son of a bitch. "Let's try Violet." There was an actual phone book in the booth. You wouldn't find that anywhere in Chicago. I called Violet. She sounded like I woke her up, but she agreed to meet us. I didn't want to wait around, so we picked the library as a rendezvous point. "Al Holcomb live around here?" I asked her. "Nah, 2 blocks out of your way." She gave me direction. She added, "I had a little meeting with Cody. He confirmed that Al has a black mistress." "How did he know?" "Said he had sources." I said, "We'll stop and see Al before we meet you." "At this hour? Visiting the head of the clan in the middle of the night? Works for me." We huddled under the umbrella and marched to Al Holcomb's house. It was a 3-story narrow Victorian home with 2 turrets in front and a filigree and detail on the woodwork, under the roof and above the windows. We stood outside a screened-in porch. I leaned my thumb on the doorbell and lit it. Bong. In a few minutes, lights turned on inside the house. The lamp on the porch flicked on, but it took several moments for the first door to open. The muzzle of a shotgun appeared in the opening, followed by Al Holcomb. "What do you want?" he demanded. Gone was the overbearing good cheer from when I met him at Della's barbecue. "We need to talk to you," Scott said. Holcomb pumped the shotgun. "I don't want to talk to you. Get off my property. I'll shoot you, and no jury will convict me. I'll say you were trying to attack me. Remember what happened to that foreign kid in Louisiana? We know how to deal with visitors in the South." He stepped onto the porch and raised the gun to his shoulder. "Why'd you kill the sheriff?" I asked. "Did he find out you have an African-American mistress?" Slowly, he lowered the shotgun to his side, hit it in one. I thought, "Can we talk?" I asked. Thunder boomed and rain poured down around us. He lifted the barrel of the gun with one hand and shoved it up against the hook holding the screen door closed. The hook thunked lightly against the wood door. "I don't want to talk to you on the porch," he said. "I don't want people seeing me with you." He stopped us 3 feet inside the front door. "I don't want you going no further." We were in a mudroom, with umbrellas in a stand, boots on the floor, and raincoats on hooks. Doors led off to the left, and directly ahead to the right were stairs leading up. "When did the sheriff find out you had an African-American mistress?" People are going to be sorry they talked to you, he said. I hadn't thought about the capacity of the southern gentleman to get revenge on those around him. Maybe people who lived here could take care of themselves, but against the powers of the Klan and the velvet southern night, I wasn't sure. Jasper Williams told us first, but we've had it confirmed. By who? The local cops, for one. We glared at each other. Most probably none of this would go anywhere if I kill you first. Even if you can't be that stupid, I said. Is this macho kill everybody crap real? You can't just indiscriminately murder people, even in the South. Someone would notice dead bodies piling up. He considered this for a minute. I repeated my question. When did the sheriff find out? We'll not spread it around if you tell us the truth. He sighed deeply. A couple of weeks ago. How'd he find out? I don't know. He had ways of finding out everything about this town. Why not go further away for an affair? Atlanta. Nobody there would care about you or this little town. Who are you, Dear Abby? What did you where I went? What do you want? What did the sheriff threaten you with? I had to support him in all the elections. I had to oppose Clara and help find somebody to oppose her. He wanted her out of office. You one of the old boys who got Clara elected in the first place? There's some of us in this county who try to take an interest in civic affairs. Somebody has to take responsibility, make tough decisions. That includes being head of the Klan. What are they to you? If it was like the old days, my lover and I would have probably been lynched already. Don't be surprised if you still aren't. We don't like your kind in these parts. Where were you the night the sheriff was killed? Your sources didn't tell you. He looked at each of us in turn. Your sources didn't tell you shit. This has all been a bluff. The shotgun rose from its place at his side. We've already told our lawyer about you. He's in Chicago. You won't be able to kill him. He's not stuck in the middle of God-forsaken nowhere. But I could still kill you. Oh, give it a rest. You moron. You can no more kill us than flap your arms and fly to the moon. Your stupid shotgun is a poor prop for a sick ego. You're much better scaring lonely and frightened people in the middle of the night. How's this? Your life is going to be in ruins unless you open up to us right now. I'd at least have the pleasure of killing you. I'd be willing to take my chances with the jury down here. The expedient thing seemed to be to whack him one and grab the shotgun, so I did. The scuffle was brief. I wasn't sure whether he didn't expect an attack from a fairy, or he was just a fat old blowhard. Either way, now I had the gun. I opened the breech and dropped the shells into my hand. I threw the gun out the screen door into the rain. So, did you and your buddies get together and kill the sheriff? Or were you desperate enough to do it yourself? I didn't kill him, and I don't know who did. I had nothing to do with it. As far as I know, neither did any of my friends. Where were you the night the sheriff was murdered? We had a Klan meeting. Eyewitnesses to where I was. A friend dropped me off here at the house around 3 in the morning. I went to bed. You want to tell us who your witnesses are? He looked at Scott and laughed. Why don't you go talk to your brother Hiram? What? Holcomb laughed. It may or may not come to my word against yours about having a black mistress, but you'll have to talk to your own family, Carpenter. Hiram would never hurt anybody, Scott said. He was at the hospital that night. Holcomb laughed again. Not after midnight. A lot of hate in the Carpenter family. You folks have tried to lord it over everybody. The poor family struggling for years, but acting like they're better than everybody else, and huge pots of money because one kid is lucky enough to be a gifted athlete. I can't stand any of you. But look to your own for real hatred. My brother would never hurt me or anyone I know. He wouldn't plot against me or someone I loved. Scott was pale and trembling, knowing that his brother was in the Klan and probably actively working against him. Shouldn't have been a surprise. I didn't bother to point out to him that Hiram had written us the vicious letter and that he was probably the one who helped keep Shannon and Nathan against us. It did seem the right time for, "I told you so," Halcom said. "Take your threats, my shotgun, if you want, and go talk to your own family." He wouldn't answer any more questions, even under threat. He knew he'd hit home with Scott about his brother. When we walked out the door, Violet's car was at the curb. I picked up the shotgun, and we hurried ourselves inside. Scott sat in front next to Violet. "Didn't see you at the library," she said. "Thought I'd check here. What happened?" Scott told her. I placed the shotgun on the floor of the car. I was uncomfortable in the ill-fitting clothes. I wasn't soaked, but water seemed to be seeping into my pores. "That's not true about Hiram," Scott said. "Halcom is just trying to protect himself. No brother of mine would do such a thing." "I haven't been able to get hold of Hiram," Violet said. "I was down at the library. We decided to move everything. We had over 100 volunteers. We even trucked part of the collection to the next county. It's started to rain an inch an hour. Now the Weather Bureau isn't sure when it's going to stop. Water is rising fast." "Should we evacuate Daddy?" Scott asked. "We should stop at the hospital anyway," I said. "Maybe Hiram will be there." "He didn't do anything," Scott said. "He'd never do something to hurt me. I'm his flesh and blood. I know him. He wouldn't." "I'm going to talk to him," I said. "I know you love him, but when is the last time that you really talked to him? Years ago. You don't know him anymore. You're adults now, and his world has been different from yours for many years." "He wouldn't do anything to hurt me," Scott insisted. I kept silent as Violet drove us to the other side of town and the hospital. On the second floor, Scott called into the CCU. Shannon and Nathan came out, and Scott went in. In the waiting room, his brother and sister clustered as far as they could away from Violet and me. Violet had confirmed that a few weeks ago, Shannon had quit her job as a secretary for a local funeral parlor on the town square. I wondered if that had anything to do with Jasper saying she'd been acting odd. Shannon wore a long dress and a silk blouse with sleeves down to her wrists and buttons clasped shut to the neck. Nathan wore a sport coat, tie, and a faded blue jeans. They glared at me as I walked over and asked who was supposed to relieve them. They said it was Hiram. He'd be there in half an hour. Their cousin Sally was the other carpenter on duty in their father's room. Violet and I walked up to the third floor and visited Dennis. We only got a glance in the room. He was asleep. Large swaths of bandages covered his face. It was long after regular visiting hours were over. A nurse walked by and gently moved us away. She told us he was going to be okay, and they were fairly certain he would not lose his eye. Back on the second floor, Nathan and Shannon had left. While waiting for Hiram, I said to Violet, "One thing I don't get about this town, if they've got all these secrets and everybody knows everybody else's business, then how come everybody didn't know all this information about the sheriff? Sometimes you know things and you shut your eyes. Or maybe it's that lots of people know cheap, tawdry gossip, but not really awful secrets. You could know Uncle Felix's great aunt drank whiskey from a slop pail during the full moon, but it's not really vital, cheap, tawdry gossip. Genealogy, background, and pettiness don't add up to practical knowledge." "I think I understand. Speaking of cheap, tawdry gossip, I can't believe Magnolia is really buffing old Halcom. Can't believe he wouldn't be scared about people finding out. His clan buddies would go nuts. Maybe old Al pushed one of his buddies over the edge. Maybe others had grudges against Peter Woodall. Al just encouraged them. Lit the spark." "Could be. But if Hiram hates Scott, why kill the sheriff? You've got Jasper saying Hiram was doing something illegal, but you've got no proof sticking the body in the car could have just have easily gotten Scott under suspicion. And why take a chance being seen? So, say all the sheriff wanted was political support. It's blackmail. But it's not the end of the world. You have to support somebody in an election." "People's emotions get involved," I said. "It could be an election for dog catcher, but if people are angry or desperate, you never know what could happen. I think the other major motivation for murder would be the sheriff getting his jollies from women he threatened to lock up. Now, I could see a southern gentleman defending his own and his wife's honor. Maybe the sheriff got hold of Hiram's wife? I intend to ask Hiram a lot of questions, and I want to do it without Scott around. Hiram walked in 45 minutes later. He entered the lounge, saw us, and hesitated. "I need to talk to you," I said. He turned to leave. Violet glided to the door and blocked his exit. I stood up. "I'm going to talk to you, Hiram. We know you're in the Klan." "Violet, you get out of my way. I'm not going to hurt a lady, but you move out of my way or I'll put you out of my way." "No," I said. "You're done putting anybody anywhere. Or is that what you did with the sheriff?" He reached for Violet in a flash. His hand and arm were twisted up against his back. "What are you looking so stunned about?" Violet said to me. "You think I can't protect myself?" "I'm impressed," I said. Hiram struggled. Violet wrenched his hand higher and tighter. "Ouch, let go!" "Stop moving around," Violet ordered. He held still. "That old stereotype of the southern woman as soft and pliable and barefoot and pregnant and staying home and slopping the hogs is dead. We can take care of ourselves. You listen to Tom. You talk to him. Figures a faggot has to have a woman protected." "Hiram," I said, "why don't you all just shut up and listen for all of a few minutes, and you all can give us answers so we all can find out who all killed the sheriff, and then I all can get out of you all's town." An elderly couple appeared in the doorway, arm in arm. They supported each other. They gave us quizzical looks. Violet moved Hiram out of their way. The woman called into the CCU. She hung up and told her companion it would be a few minutes before they could go in. Hiram did not beg them to call for help. He struggled briefly, but complied with our request that we change our venue. We moved down the hall to the conference room where Dr. McClarty had talked to the family. Violet marched them into the room, let Hiram go, and said, "I'll be outside the door if you need me." "Thanks," I said. I stood between Hiram and the door. He wore black jeans and a black t-shirt and was sitting on the edge of a backless couch. He rubbed his hands together. "What?" he growled. "I know you hate me," I said, "but why hate Scott? He's your brother. He doesn't think you'd ever do anything to hurt him." "I don't have to talk to you. Violet's not here to beat me up." "What is it with you? Do we need to mud wrestle at midnight in a swamp? Beat each other up? Duel at 50 paces with sawed-off shotguns? You don't get to hide behind bullying non-answers. You're in the Klan. I want to know where you went after your dad's operation, the night the sheriff was killed. Jasper Williams told me you were doing something illegal on your farm, although he didn't know what. We are going to have a little talk. If necessary, we're going to have state and federal investigators down here. Our lawyer is already working on that. We aren't going to trust to the local authorities. Maybe they'll protect you, some, but when the feds get down here, they're going to want real answers because you're Scott's brother. I'd do some to try and protect you for his sake, but now I want some answers. Quiet and civilized, or angry and rude, whichever way you prefer." He began smacking one fist into the open palm of the other. "How come you're a member of the Klan?" "I want to be." "Why don't you elaborate for me?" The fist moved faster. He said, "I believe in what they stand for. Racial purity, superiority to whites, keeping the godless out, keeping faggots like you in your place." "Don't you love Scott?" He laughed, but didn't smile. "I've hated him since we were kids. He always got everything. I was always compared to him by everybody." "That wasn't his fault." "Nothing was ever Scott's fault. He never paid attention to anyone besides himself. The whole family figured he was our ticket out of this swamp. Well, I busted my ass. I got out of the swamp on my own. I may not be as rich as my brother, but I've got no reasons to hang my head." "Was there a Klan meeting the night the sheriff was killed?" Yes, I drove Al to his place and then went home to bed. No, I don't have a witness, but I didn't kill the sheriff. What did Peter Woodall catch you doing on your farm that was illegal? Nothing. Jasper didn't think you were growing illegal drugs. I think he would have been able to tell that. What was it? Nothing. I have to get the federal marshals down there to see what this is all about. That's the nice thing about Scott having tons of money. The rich are treated differently. We'll have this place crawling with agents soon. Let him crawl. He stood up. See, I didn't kill the sheriff. No witnesses, no guilt. And I'm not going to have to put up with you for long. Goodbye. He strode toward the door. I grabbed his arm to stop him. What do you mean you're not going to have to put up with me? He laughed and shoved me hard. I kept my grip on his arm and twisted it behind his back. He bellowed and squirmed. Violet threw open the door. Scott and Cody stood behind her. They saw me bending Hiram's arm behind his back. Let him go, Scott said. Hiram wrenched himself away, straightened himself up, glared at all of us, walked into the hall, and turned around. The four of them looked at me. I said, he says he didn't kill the sheriff. Cody said, you're under arrest. Gay Mysteries audiobooks. I think it is easy to hate a label, but a face humanizes the word. So this effort is twofold. To offer comfort to those like myself that your world didn't end because you don't fit into the view of acceptable society on both sides. And in hopes of helping those with family that are LGBTQ, that it doesn't mean we are aliens from the child they once knew. Reassure them so they can maybe be supportive at the same time, being true to their values.